What's up, guys? It's Noah, and today we're going to be discussing the topic of grace. You may have seen I dropped a shorter video earlier this week on this topic, and I promised a longer one was coming. Well, now this is the longer one, and I hope you enjoy it. We're going to break down what is grace, why we struggle with it, and look at the Bible a little bit because that's the best backup we can have. I hope you leave feeling encouraged and like you have a better understanding of what this is. So, we're going to start it off by talking about what does grace actually mean? So it comes from the Greek root charis, which means blessing or favor or kindness. And in English, I think this is where we often get confused. We don't know how to differentiate between mercy and grace because in church, they're often thrown around so interchangeably. Well, mercy is not getting something you do deserve, and grace is getting something that you don't deserve. I'm going to tell you a quick little story to help prove that. So, you're someone that really enjoys racing in your car on the streets, and you speed a lot. And because of that, you get a lot of tickets. And it comes to a point where you need to appear in court. And you're worried because you're thinking, man, I haven't paid those other tickets, and now I have this other one. I know I can't pay this. And so you get up in front of the court, and it's your first instinct to try and tell them about how good of a person you are because you're hoping the judge will go easy on you. You're thinking, listen, I'm a good guy. I open the door for people. I help old ladies cross the street. I in school I was friends with that weird kid and I smile at people when I walk by. I'm nice. I try to donate to charity. I'm a good guy. But the judge is going to look at you and he's going to say, how is this related to the case? He's not going to care because good things we do are not related to the bad things we've done. They're not comparable. And so you're going to start sweating because you're thinking, oh no, like I don't have the money for this ticket. I don't want to go to jail. But then the judge gets off his seat. He steps down, takes his robe off, walks over to you, and he hands you the money. And he says, use this. And then he gets back up on his seat and he says, do you have the money to pay for your ticket? And you're like, yeah, I do. So you give him the money. And that's grace. If the judge had just chose to waive your ticket, that would be mercy. But grace is when he paid it himself because you get the benefit of being wiped clean without having to have done something yourself. I think that's a great way to explain the initial grace of salvation. But can I tell you, that's not the only grace we're going to receive? Yes, Ephesians 2:8 says, for by grace we have been saved, and that is not of our own doing. It is a gift of God, so that no one may boast. But the truth is, we get new examples of grace in our life every single day. And I think that initial grace is often the first barrier that we hit because every other religion is going to tell you that you're going to be saved by your own works, that it's, I need to be good enough. I need to do these things, check off these boxes, and then I'll be good. Then I'll hit nirvana or enlightenment or I'll make it to heaven. But the truth is, someone else had to pay the price. And that's the first gift of grace we receive. And we can't boast about it because, like I said, none of us could have paid that ourselves. But there are also new examples of grace in our life every single day. I want to tell you that in Philippians 4:19, Paul says, my God will supply every need of yours according to the riches of glory in Christ Jesus. And in Acts 14:17, it says, he kept constantly doing good things and showing you kindness and giving you rains from heaven and productive seasons, filling your heart with food and happiness. Can I tell you that that's grace too? The fact that God chooses to bless us, that God not only chose to save us, that he chose to restore us to relationship with him, that he chose to refine our hearts to give us that sanctifying grace so that we can become more like him. And then he provided each step of the way, just little blessings that we didn't deserve, whether that's be when money's tight and it works out, or when you've been job hunting for a long time and you're not the most qualified person, but you get offered that job that you're like, no way. or that scholarship, or when you're having a rough day and then you look outside and you see the sun hit just right, or you're lonely and you haven't really been doing a good job of keeping up with your friends, but then you get a text and a word of encouragement from one of them. God blesses us in so many ways, and then we don't deserve it. When we try and do things based off of who we are, our own confidence, our own capabilities, our own consistencies, we're going to end up disappointing because we're never as capable or as consistent as we think we are. And our confidence is going to take a hit. I think one of the best stories to remind us about grace is found in Luke chapter 15, verses 11 through 32. The parable of the lost son. Let me read it to you real quick. He also said, a man has 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the share of the estate I have coming to me. So he distributed the assets to them. Not many days later, the younger son gathered together all that he had and traveled to a distant country where he squandered his estate in foolish living. After he had spent everything, a severe famine struck the country, and he had nothing. Then he went to work for one of the citizens of that country, who sent him into the fields to feed pigs. He longed to eat his fill from the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one would give him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, How many of my father's hired workers have more than enough food, and here I am dying of hunger? I'll go to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired workers. So that he got up and went to his father. But while the son was still a long way away, the father saw him, was filled with compassion. He ran, threw his arms around his neck, and kissed him. The son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father told his servants, Quick, bring out the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Then bring the fattened calf and slaughter it. Let's celebrate with a feast, because this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. So they began to celebrate. Now the older son was in the field. As he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he summoned one of the servants, questioning what these things meant. Your brother is here, he told him, and your father has slaughtered the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound. Then he became angry and didn't want to go in. So his father came out and pleaded with him. But he replied to his father, Look, I've been slaving many years for you, and I have never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me a goat so that I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who had devoured your assets with prostitutes, you slaughtered the fattened calf for him? Son, he said to him, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we have to celebrate and rejoice, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. All right, I think both brothers are actually a lesson on grace. The first brother, obviously, the one who went off and chose to leave, to step out of the grace that his father had for him, to enter back into sin. And he went out, but he realizes his mistake. And he figured, at least I can walk back to my father and ask for his forgiveness, and maybe he'll hire me as a servant. I don't deserve anything more than that. I don't even really deserve to be his servant after how I treated him and wished he was dead. But grace, the father ran, which is something that they didn't do in the Hebrew culture as a father. He ran up and hugged and kissed him and gave him nice clothes and threw a party, because that's the grace of our Father. When we mess up, he doesn't want us to fix it before we come back. He doesn't want us to have it all together. He wants us to come to him. He wants us to be in relationship. He just wants us. And then the second son, we can learn something from him too, which this is the son that, if I'm being honest, I tend to relate with more, that I've had this issue where it's we think we have it all together. This is the son that was relying on his consistency and his confidence. This is the one that was like, I was working hard. I was doing all the right things. I was checking the boxes. But obviously, he didn't have that personal relationship with his father. Because if you look at him, what he said, you didn't do any of this stuff for me. But if he had asked, the father would have done it for him. The father would have happily given him his desire. But he didn't have that relationship to ask. And he gets angry when someone else needs grace, not realizing that he had stepped outside of grace himself, that he had walked out of it and wasn't living in grace. He was living in judgment of others. And to be honest, if we don't have grace for ourselves, then we can't have grace for other people. And so obviously he needed a corrected posture and understanding of grace. And so both brothers, the father offers to restore them into that correct understanding and relationship. He tells them, celebrate and rejoice. He wants both of them to be partying with him, and he wants you and me to party with him. I want to encourage you today that you might feel like that you have been the younger brother who went off and squandered stuff, and you've messed up, and you don't feel like God's grace is there for you. It is. God wants to throw a party for you. He's going to be so happy that you're coming back. And if you're the older brother who's frustrated at other people, or they're just feeling cold, and they struggle to give grace to other people, or even to have grace for themselves sometimes. Like the older brother, you might be frustrated because you feel like you're serving all the time. But I want to tell you that serving isn't just a good quality automatically because you're doing it. We often think that it's humility, but sometimes it's pride. And I want to tell you that the heart of it matters, and you should be serving out of grace. And if you're not able to do that, then sometimes you need to learn to be like Mary, not Martha, to take a step back and enjoy the party. Because just serving and serving out of ourselves, that leads to exhaustion and further separates us from God because it increases the bitterness in your heart. Learn to step in and live in that grace. God just wants relationship with you. He wants you to receive grace, and then he also wants you to not only hold it for yourself, but to give it to others. Can you do that? Let's do that together. If you're interested in more content like this, please subscribe and comment if there's any topics you want me to cover next.